500 years, more account held of him, who was the adornment of his time, suddenly great clarity given, that for this age makes them very contented. I am Michael Nostradamus, and what I have just said I wrote long ago about how my prophecies would be regarded in the future. As I address you now, it is just over 500 years since I was born in 1503. 500 years from now to your time present, I am, as I foresaw, more relevant and recognized than ever before. As I wrote in my open letter to His Excellent and late Majesty, King Henry II, in which I clearly said that my writings will carry more weight in the future than during my lifetime. Of King Henry, I made strenuous efforts to warn him of my prophetic vision directly concerning his impending death in 1559. It is also written and publicly recorded in 1555, before the occurrence, in quatrain 35 of the 1st century. But there are other reasons why 500 years later I speak again, and specifically to you in your age now. Your time is now, at the beginning of the 21st century, a time of many wonders, but also of great changes and great torments, and of worse things to come, some of imminent detriment and catastrophe, that I must now encourage and beseech you to find the true meaning contained within the quatrains most relevant to your time. There is greatness and goodness in your achievements, but there is also much suffering, anguish, torments, and pain, much injustice, warring and brewing malcontent, that if not warned of with understanding and with great effort guarded against and diverted from, will bring much horror and far worse detriment upon you and your kin. But for prophetic vision, I would not have imagined these horrors that are set to befall upon you. My heart wants my head to be wrong. Seeing the future is as much a curse as it is a blessing, but one I humbly accept as a gift from the Almighty One. I am not a prophet and do not profess to be one, and state this in both of my open letters to my son Caesar and to King Henry II, respectively. The first to Caesar I openly recorded. Now, my son, although I have inserted the name of prophet here, I will not attribute to myself so sublime a title. For qui propheta dictur hodie olim vocabatur videns. He who is nowadays described as prophet was formerly called a seer. And prophets are those, properly, my son, that see things remote from the natural knowledge of men. But put the case. Like prophets, by the means of the perfect light of prophecy, may see as well divine things as human, which cannot be seen the effects of future prediction, do extend a great way, for these secrets of God are incomprehensible. And the efficient power moves afar off the natural knowledge, taking their beginning at the free will, cause these things to appear which otherwise could not be known, neither by human auguries. or any hidden knowledge or secret virtue under heaven, but only by means of some indivisible eternal being or comitial and Herculean agitation, the causes come to be known by the celestial motion. And for avoidance of any doubt that I consider myself a prophet, or that others mistake me as one, I also now recite from memory from the second letter to King Henry II of France. But the danger of the times, O most serene King, requires that such secrets should not be bared except in enigmatic sentences, having, however, only one sense and meaning, and nothing ambiguous or amphibological inserted. Rather, they are under a cloudy obscurity, with a natural infusion, not to unlock the creation of the world, according to the calculation and Punic Chronicle of Joel. I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters will prophesy. But such prophecy proceeded from the mouth of the Holy Ghost, who is the sovereign and eternal power, together with the heavens, and caused some of them to predict great and marvelous events. As for myself, I would never claim such a title, never, please God. I readily admit that all proceeds from God, and render to him thanks, honor, and immortal praise. I have mixed therewith no divination coming from fate, all from God and nature, and for the most part integrated with celestial movements. It is much like seeing in a burning mirror with clouded vision the great events, sad, prodigious, and calamitous events, that in due time will fall upon the principal worshippers, first upon the temples of God. The title of prophet is only reserved to those sent forth and re-entered into the holiness within that of the greatest book. I am a mortal man of good intent and serve the time of which I know the hour. But according to the calculation and Punic Chronicle of Joel, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and daughters will prophesy. That is what I have done. My visions are of two occurring types. The first are impressed upon me quite suddenly, no matter where I am or what I am doing. In the beginning, I was very frightened and confused by these strangely disturbing experiences, but soon learned to cope with them, indeed manipulate them. The second method of visionary seeing is by a ritual in which I self-induce them, and it is by this method that almost all were seen and are now recorded in my original publication of Les Prophéties between 1555 and 1568. Here, recorded in temporal medium for your generation and your future generations, are my foretellings concerning your recent past, present, and future. They serve to warn and to some measure protect you. As although indelibly written, many are not as yet set in stone, that some by open possibility and by clever discovery of the secret keys therein may be beneficially influenced with the hope of avoiding detrimental effect and resulting in an alternative future, and that better serves mankind. Take heed then, understand them, and make changes to good effect and avoid the worst. They are not to be understood by everyone, not for unlocked open knowledge, lest the right hand knows what the left is doing. Only a few under the veil of secrecy can and will determine this hidden knowledge, that parts may be of alternative future, and certain prophecies averted, and of myself gladly proved wrong. Find my keys and unlock your future. Some events you cannot influence and are beyond mankind's control. And of course there is the prophecy which could never ever be of my own and are of God and cannot be changed. They are set in stone and cannot be changed or influenced even in the slightest degree. Take forewarning and be as best prepared as you can. Saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Only God declares the future. It is impossible for God to lie. His word is certain, and what God foretells will come to pass. He does not predict it. There are no alternative futures. My prophecies consist of 10 centuries, not because each century has 100 years of time, but because they contain 100 poetic 4-line verses called quatrains. The only exception to this formation is century 7, which deliberately contains 42 quatrains only. The quatrains are deliberately not dated and span different periods of future history. My predictions go as far as the year 3795. They are not in any chronological order, but numbers sometimes play a significant role. I first started writing them here in Salon, beginning in the year 1552, some coming after, say, 1554, but that is not true. It was actually 52. I completed and compiled them within several years, thereafter having them of the most part complete of 4 centuries, first published in 1555, with the remaining being completed a total of 942 quatrains by 1568. They will be, or more correctly have been, in constant print up to your present time now. Such is their growing renown, you will agree. And of even more an increasing importance they will become. My published quatrains are mostly written in French, with some Italian, Greek, Latin, Spanish, and English. There is some use of invented word also, words concerning future innovations that at the time of writing are yet to be invented. For good reason, I tried whenever possible to avoid using these new words revealed to me in a future beyond my writings, thus avoiding their preemptive use. One such example is the word antenna, a word not invented for 400 years following my penning to paper. The valiant captain's head cut off, thrown before his adversaries, his body hung up upon the fleet's antenna. Confused, they row against the wind. For the most part, I intentionally made my quatrains obscure in nature, because if I had been too specific, I would greatly trouble some powerful people who would have me tried as a heretic and magician. I know my own future and know the hour. Therefore heed the visions depicting ill effect of my future self, and guard against their happenings. I also did not want to forewarn those of malicious intent in the future, of which there are many. If their actions were of public knowledge before their happening, then they would simply take account and alter their plans. A deliberate obscurity is intended for all these reasons. And of course, that they should not be interpreted with the intent to self-fulfill. Subsequently, they should not know that once the keys to my prophecies are found and then kept under secret veil by the best able to use and serve honorable intent, can then act silently to successful effect. It was never intended that my prophecies should be generally understood by everyone, only those of good heart and soul. My prophetic quatrains are not without symbolism, metaphor, anagram, cryptic code, and even pun. Here and there, I sometimes added or removed a letter to or from a word, hereby veiling its true nature and meaning. Other times, one word can mean two things, yet differently the same. My aim being to efficiently add more meaningful interpretation and import, but none are written to give alternate or ambiguous meaning. If perceived as ambiguous, then this is only within the received perception and understanding of the person interpreting them, and not one intended by my writing. My prophecies are clear enough to understand by those of good intelligence. Some of my quatrains can be interpreted specifically, others more generally. All need detailed examination. The more you study them, the more sense you will make of them. If you cannot make sense of them relating to your present time and future, then you will, at least with hindsight, see the past in a clearer perspective. Some contain different time periods and events within the same quatrain, others not. Be advised that some lines are polymorphic in nature, and though appearing to go with the next line of the same quatrain within, they actually go with other lines of different quatrains. The majority of my quatrains cover the geographical regions of France, Europe, Asia, and the New World of America, even to the Arctic poles of the whole earth then, and some beyond. Of people known to your history that I can actually name for you now as limited but convincing example are Napoleon, Hitler, Franco, Mussolini, Louis Pasteur, and Queen Victoria. Also terrible events such as all manner of destruction and explosions, air and space warfare, and of inventions of underwater boats, which you call submarines, and flying machines, both on and off the earth, and of mountains and pestilences man-made. As the future becomes the present and then the past, my prophecies will carry more and more weight as timed events set in motion as a recurring wave come upon you. As their hour approaches, nears, then so too will your realization and subsequent understanding. But to the few, I address this specifically. Find my key to unlock the secret of my prophecy, and with quiet consideration, proceed. By now, however, there is much confusion and debate about my credibility, my motives, and my prophecies. No consensus yet, and still debaters divided into two sides and one part. the first sight doubts my honest sincerity, thinking it a poor foundation on which my prophetic truths can stand. I do not suspect, but actually know, this will remain so for many and for a long time, even in the light of evidence past and yet to unfold before their horrified eyes. The second side is of those who, with open mind and heart, consider my prophecies to be true, and although perhaps not understanding how to decode their prediction before their happening, can, with hindsight, realize the efficacy of the foretold prophecy after its actuality and revealing. The third part lies equidistant in the center, and are mostly made up of those who know little or nothing of me or my prophecies, certainly no more than a depth of shallowness. I do not exclude anyone from what I am about to say, and you are not forced to stay with me as I now reveal evidence of my prophecies that have already occurred and of the future ones relevant to your lifetime that are about to bring such momentous and significant change upon you and directly impact upon your lives. For the benefit of the third part, I will give a brief contextual history of myself and beg indulgence from those who know more about me. I will be brief with this information, as most is already known and readily available to you. I was born in Saint-Rémy-de-Provence in France. My original family were of Jewish origin, but converted to Christianity. Thereupon, I was subsequently brought up in the Catholic faith. My last name was Latinized from Nostradamus to Nostradamus, the name now familiar to you, and one that will become even more known as time progresses further. I was a conscientious, hard-working student of some merit, studying classical languages, mathematics, and astrology. I was greatly interested in recipe and the mixing of all things which, in the beginning, manifested itself into cookery, offering great and delicious experiment, but not without the odd bitter taste. I traveled and collected many plants for mixing and use in medicinal compounds as remedy. Furthering my great interest in medicine, I enrolled at the University of Montpellier and trained to a sufficient degree as a skilled physician. Although not taught this, I uphold the Copernican theory as correct, and that the world is round and circles around the sun. As I speak now, at this time being 100 years before, Galileo will be prosecuted by the Catholic Church for upholding this same belief in understanding. Of course, you now know this as fact, as this man and others are well known to you in your recorded histories. I draw great comfort in helping the sick and in relieving their pain and suffering. I did not practice the ill-considered bloodletting as a means of cure, and by desisting from this and other false medical practices by which not administering and with invented remedies of my own and not without a little help from the future, had great success in treating my patients of the dreaded plague and other maladies. But, very tragically, I was not able to save the lives of my first wife and our children from this biting plague. On account of being away saving others, I was deeply distressed by my loss, and to this day wonder why, given this gift, I was not forewarned beforehand. This taught me a bitter lesson. And if I could not wait to be enlightened by the intermittent and untimely flashes of prophetic insight, then I would learn to bring them upon me at my will and command. Having lost all that was most dear to me, and in a very deep depression, I then traveled, nay, wandered around France and Italy, starting first in a melancholic haze, then becoming more buoyant as I observed new geography, cultures, and peoples. My mind, by natural condition, is active and always absorbing and processing new images, innovations, and ideas. It was during this time that I took account of my strange abilities of prophetic gift, which later I came to understand and manipulate under the right conditions. One experience in Italy, when walking on my way, a group of Franciscan monks came to pass me by. The way was narrow, and I naturally stepped aside, and as I did so, I was hit by a vision within a blinding flash. I threw myself on my knees, outstretched my hands, and clutched the hem of the garments of the lowly monk raised high, my head bowed in reverence. This soon-to-be Most High of monks, being before but a simple swine-herder of low birth, was so taken aback by my over-respectful display and begged me up, asking, "Why do you prostrate yourself to me this way?" I replied, "I must yield myself and bow to His Holiness." 19 years later, this simple man, Felice Peretti, became Pope Sixtus V. This event has been recorded well, and many of you will already know this. I had many other visions of prophecy, and will now make very deliberate mention of the very important ones to you and your time. All this in my effort that I can lay a foundation of proof before you for which the prophecies yet to happen can be placed on secure foundation and therefore taken very seriously. These include much natural and man-made disaster, terrorism, environmental damage, wars, things strange and of celestial origins, monsters alien, and the abomination of abominations, that is the third Antichrist. The following quatrains concern occurrences now known to the incredible numbers of people and peoples existing upon the earth today. These I truly predicted and had publicly recorded in print many, many decades and centuries before their happening. Now take heed and care of thought. It is your future and affects you greatly. Field of combat, a single duel, the old one overcome by the young lion. He pierces eyes through his cage of gold, 2 wounds from one, dying a cruel death. This prophecy sadly remained unheeded, even after making strong representation and first-hand account to the great King Henry II himself. His magnificent and more knowing wife, Queen Catherine de' Medici, although persuaded herself of my sincere premonition, remained unable to convince the king, and my warning was ignored. He was mortally injured in a jousting accident or ritual warring tournament upon a field of simulated combat. His opponent, the Comte de Montgomery, who was 6 years younger than Henry and the more virile. 2 wounds made one. One of the lance's splinters pierced through the gilded visor into the king's eye, the other splinter his temple just behind. Both splinters penetrated the brain. I saw 2 lions emblazoned on both shields. For 10 days he suffered terrible pain, a cruel death indeed. As a result, my fame and fortune began to grow. Had he taken my warning seriously, then future history would have been alternated, and my prophecy would, of course, have been wrong, as this was my true wish and genuine desire. Continuing. The blood of the just makes mistake at London. In 23 the sixes burnt by lightning fire. The ancient dame falls from her high place, many of the same sect killed. In 5 days, a catastrophic fire destroyed the city of London. Almost 100 churches were destroyed, including the magnificent St. Paul's Cathedral. My quatrain clearly states the date of this great fire as 1666. Justice was done to the Black Death, the bubonic plague, a disease spread by infesting rats that infect otherwise healthy blood. Important and verifiable prophecies of the French Revolution. Before battle, the great wall falls. Death to the great one, death too sudden and lamented. Born imperfect, he swims most part, the ground stained near the river of blood. In 1789, on July the 14th, the common people of France broke their servitude and stormed the walls of the Bastille. At the time, a prison symbolic of the excessive and detested French monarchy. This was the defining action that began the French Revolution. The bloody slicing of the guillotine, rising and falling, stood upon the banks of the River Seine, blood flowing into the waters nearby. Songs, tunes, requests, enslaved people, kept prisoner by princes and lords. This future by headless idiots, by divine prayers admitted. Here also, I describe the enslaved people as the serfdom of French peasants, the princes, lords, and aristocracy that were imprisoned and mostly beheaded. Now, the first Antichrist. Poor Né Laurent, more in fire than blood shall be. Lauda to swim, the great ones flee to the Suez. Entry refused to the Agassas. Pompon and the Durance, keeping them confined. Frequently I used anagrams for both names and numbers, repositioning their true sequence. rearranging Pro-Né-Laurent into its proper sequence, becomes Napoleon Roi, Napoleon the King, and in correct Corsican spelling. Napoleon imprisoned both popes, Pius VI and Pius VII. More butcher than king in England, born of obscure place, by force reigning, coward, without faith, without law, the land bleeds. His time is drawing so near that I sigh for it. Napoleon was a butcher, and regarded as such even by his own allies and supporters. The captive prince conquered in Italy, passing Genoa by sea as far as Marseille, overcome by great efforts of foreign forces, except gunshot, a barrel of honey. The empire being transferred to a small place, quickly growing large, to a minute confined space, in the midst of which he is laying his scepter. Napoleon was first exiled to the island of Elba. Then, after escaping and after loss of the Battle of Waterloo, he relinquished his power in exchange for safe exile on the island of St. Helena. His imperial crest was the bee. An assembly out of Castel Franco, causing schisms. The great ambassador does not agree. Those of the Gulf of Gênes entering the conflict, denying entry into the great Gulf. Here I directly mention Francisco Franco, the Spanish dictator, another of bloody renown, also referencing his predecessor, Primo de Rivera. Now your history worsens further with the second Antichrist, even more heinous and more terrible than the first, but lesser than the third Antichrist yet to come. Of poor people, a young child born in the depths of Western Europe, his tongue seducing great troops, his reign increasing in the Eastern Kingdom. All four lines of this quatrain refer directly and of clear prediction to the birth and rise of the abomination and second Antichrist known as Adolf Hitler. He was born of poor parentage, and with his charisma seduced the great nation of Germany. His reputation grew in the East, soon forming an alliance of war with Japan. Soon the year not far from Venus, the two greatest ones of Asia and of Africa, they say have come from the Rhine and Hister, cries, tears at Malta and Ligurian coasts. Hister is a combination of the words Hitler and Hister. Hister is the Latin name for the river Danube, near the banks of which Hitler was born. As I said before, sometimes I use two words together that are differently the same, adding more meaning and import. Beasts ferocious with hunger, swimming across rivers. The greater part of the battle is against Hister, the great one dragged in a cage of iron, when the Germanic child observes nothing. The bestial Nazi war machine crossed rivers and invaded France and other surrounding countries. Eventually he was defeated by the Allied forces, in the end imprisoned within his own bunker, and when all was completely lost, still refusing for the good of his own people to surrender. After the victory of the raving tongue, the mind attempts tranquility and rest. Throughout the war, the bloody victor rants, roasting the tongue, the flesh, and the bones. Beware of ranting haters such as Hitler. A great people were almost exterminated along with other minorities. Many in the ovens of Auschwitz, a Nazi death camp designed for efficient genocide, lasting 1,000 years, with more planned genocide, ultimately identifying you and your forebears being classed as minorities set for extermination. Do not think you are of the majority. You will quickly find you are in the minority. Heed this well. The power of speech can and will be enacted to terrible effect. Beware of ranting haters. Beware of silken tongue. The great pontiff party of war, subjugating Danube's frontiers, pursuing the cross by crooked iron, captives gold, jewels more than 100,000 rubies. Liberty not regained, occupied by the black, fierce, and unjust villain. Of Hister, the Republic of Venice vexed, when the matter of the pont is opened. Crosses of iron as the Third Holy Roman Empire, Nazi swastikas, you know. 2 Antichrists are now exposed. There is still a third to come. But a few more for those yet to be convinced. The lady left to reign alone, the unique one first in the bed of honor extinguished, weeping for 7 years with grief, then long reigning in good fortune. Queen Victoria, the great British monarch whose reign lasted 63 years and 7 months, known as the Victorian era, an empire of great expansion, prosperity, and industrial revolution, with Britain becoming the global power. Her reign is still the longest reign in history up to your time, but will be superseded. A virgin queen before marriage, she was grieved by the early loss of her husband, Prince Albert, and grieved for 7 years, never out of black. Found what was lost a long age, Pasteur honored as demigod, rumors being dishonored before the moon completes her great cycle. Louis Pasteur was a French chemist and microbiologist, a great and clever man, and remembered for his experiments and breakthroughs in the causes and prevention of disease, a very worthy cause of close interest to me and my healing inclination. His discoveries and developments saved countless millions of lives by immunization and vaccination. By my visions concerning him, I myself was able to learn some of his basic methods and put to good effect in my present day, some 300 years before he actually made his discoveries. An unfortunate smear campaign concerning the efficacy of his experiments and provenance as discoverer besmirched his name a little. Hercules, king of Rome and of Anamach, surnamed de Gaulle, thrice chief, Italy trembling, and the one of St. Mark, a renowned first monarch over all. Charles de Gaulle was 3 times leader of France. First as the leader of the Free French Forces, then as Prime Minister of the Provisional French Government, and finally as the first President of the French Fifth Republic. He remains the most influential leader of France, and will remain so. There are many other prophetic quatrains of people and events that have already passed, and by a little effort of research, you will be able to recognize them. Now we are approaching your most recent past, and I draw attention to the prophecies most recognizable by most of the world's people. The ancient work accomplished, evil ruin fall upon the great one from the roof, innocent accused of the mortal deed, the guilty hiding in a misty copse. On the 22nd of November 1963, just after midday, the American President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was shot in the city of Dallas, Texas. His assassination involved betrayal all round, from those of his associates, organized crime, special interest groups, to that of his forebears' misdeeds, all of which coalesced into a complex mixture of revenge and vested interests, organized and enacted, resulting in his death. This was not a haphazard, spontaneous act. And the accused being one Lee Harvey Oswald, whilst part of the arrangement, was indeed set up high near the roof, and was not the one guilty of the killing shot. That evil from the misty copse or grassy knoll, and came as quick as it left. Oswald himself was shot and mortally wounded 2 days later, as part of the organized cover-up. Lightning, daytime thunderbolt, the great man struck. This evil foretold by a common porter. The next foretelling falls amidst the night. Conflict in Reims, plague in London and Tuscany. Shortly after midnight on June the 5th, 1968, the late President John F. Kennedy's brother, Senator Robert Kennedy, was shot and killed in the City of Angels, whilst running for nomination for President of the United States. This assassination was not part of a conspiracy or connected to the same machinations, forces that killed his brother. A seer of that time also saw the prophecy and tried to forewarn by petition, but failed in being taken seriously. Events occurring around the time included student rioting in France and London during 1968 and 1969, and the flood in Florence, causing fear of pestilence and disease. He comes into the corner of Luna, taken and put in a strange land. The unripe fruits are a great scandal, great blame on one, to the other great praise. On July the 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong set foot upon the moon. Of which the first two lines directly refer to. Now of other occurrences of global awareness, but more recent. The last but one to have the surname of the prophet takes Diana for his day of rest, long ramblings by frenetic head of impositions delivering a great people. The prophet of the Islamic religion is Muhammad, and is also the same surname of the father of son and next heir Dodi al-Fayyad, who was killed with Diana, Princess of Wales, a royal of the British monarchy. They both died on August the 31st, 1997, whilst traveling through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris. They both died on a Sunday, and there followed much outpouring of grief and blame-mongering. The rest is still unfolding. Now we are at your very recent times in the beginnings of the 21st century. Earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth makes tremble the tower of the new city, two great rocks making war a long time, Arethusa coloring a new river red. A city under siege, being assaulted at night. Few can escape, battle not far from the sea. Her son returns, mother faints with joy. Folded letters, poison hidden. Initiated at night by dark forces by the sea, a son thought killed in the tragedy returns. The anthrax scare in posted letters, and in conjunction with, in the year 1999 and 7 months, from the sky, a great king of terror, raising again the great king of Angulmois. Mars near toward reigns happily. The date mentioned seems at first sight as if it is close but not quite. It is in fact exact and of clear understanding when revealed. 1999 is a numeric anagram, and when the order sequence is reversed, you will expose the number 9111. A number now infamous in the annals of history as the 11th of September 2001. This date is the beginning of a mindfulness of fear and prejudice that is already causing division and ultimately leading to the third great and final war. Look closely at the other lines of this and other quatrains that have now been fulfilled, and you will find all the evidence of knowledge required to be convinced that my prophecies are true. There are many other prophecies that have now come and gone, but I have mentioned these few specifically because they concern the most well-known events in your history. The ones now past can be understood by anyone of reasonable intelligence, but to the future ones, you will need to find the key. I beseech the few to find this key and unlock the secret knowledge that I have bestowed within and have long presented before you. so that the perpetrators of the hideous and heinous acts said to come are unaware of your secret knowledge. Be silent, and to good effect. Now to the prophecies that are set to affect your future. Peace, then war, famine, flood surrounds. The great mountain 7 stades circumference, spreading far, flooding great countries, even old and great foundations. The gods making it appear to humans that they are authoring a great war. Before heaven seen clear, sword and lance, that towards the left hand making great affliction. And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. The machine of flying fire troubles the great besieged captain. Within there is such sedition that to dissolute ones all hope is lost. I again mention this quatrain. The valiant captain's head cut off, thrown before his adversary. His body hung upon the fleet's antenna. Confused they row against the wind. A new sect of philosophers, despising death, gold, honors and riches, the German mountains nor borders confine, the increasing followers and flocks. Let loose is the living fire and hidden death. Inside globes appallingly horrible. By night armed forces bombard city, the city on fire, the enemy favorable to it. The religion of the name of the seas against the sect of the son of Adaluncatif. The obstinate sect without remedy is afraid of the 2 wounded by Aleph and Aleph. So great an earthquake in the month of May. Saturn, Capricorn, Jupiter, Mercury in Taurus, Venus also, Cancer, Mars in Onay. Then fall hailstones bigger than eggs. Earthquake, volcano, landslide, and flood activity will now greatly increase. So many visions have I seen of these occurrences in your future that I stopped recording them in my quatrains for avoidance of excluding other important prophecies. In the next 500 years, or your past 500 years, all these natural disasters have been steadily increasing and have already taken millions of lives. Earthquakes and volcanoes will now affect the stability of the whole world and threaten the viability of mankind. In your past 200 years, there has been much increase in density of population, which will further increase the loss of life. In their aftermath come famine, disease, and economic hardship. In the year 580, more or less, one awaits a very strange age. In the year 703, the heavens witness many realms. 1 to 5 makes change. Momentous changes will affect America, Britain, Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and other Western nations. All of these great nations will be affected. The burning lamp of inextinguishable fire is found in the temple of the Vestals. Infant found fire, water passing through a sieve, Nîmes perishing under water, market halls collapsing at Toulouse. Long awaited, never returns in Europe. One from the great Hermes in Asia appears and grows over all the kings of the East. He who has the government of the great cope is prevailed upon to commit crime. 12 red ones soil the cloth. Under murder, murder is perpetrated. Elected as pope by a deceptive election, suddenly, unexpectedly, moved, prompt and timid, by mildness and gentleness unto death provoked. Death pacifies the fear. So great a famine through pestilence, the rain extends towards the length of the Arctic pole. 100 leagues from the hemisphere's Samarobrin, living without law and politics. Such an epidemic will arise that more than 2/3 of the world's population will be removed. One will be unable to ascertain the true owners of fields and property, and weeds will grow in city streets higher than one's knees. Letters of the great prophet taken fall into the hands of the tyrant. His enterprise to deceive the king, but trouble him his theft will. The regions subject to the balance trouble the mountains with great war. All holy sects captive, and all Byzantium, that at dawn they cry, "Land, land!" The walls of brick reconstructed in marble, for 57 years a reign of peace, joy to mankind. The aqueduct renewed, health, abundant fruit, joyous, happy times. In the waters of the Danube and the Rhine comes a great camel, no regret to show. Those of Rhône tremble, more so those of Loire. The French put an end to it. The enslaved people, through warlike fortune, are elevated to so high a degree, changing their prince for one born a provincial. The army raised in the mountains, they cross the sea. The Muslim empire usurped by a third. Of his kindred, the greater part put to death. By senile death, the fourth struck by him, for fear that blood does not die by blood. The blood of churchmen spilt as water in such abundance, and for a long time it is not restrained. Woe, alas, the clergy ruined and grieving. Adversaries against the Christian Church will begin to multiply greatly and commence a persecution of the churches, the like of which was never seen. Incredible crimes against the Church, Human blood will flow in the public streets and temples like water after a tempestuous rain, coloring the nearby rivers red with blood. Garden of the world near the new city, in the way of the hollow mountain, seized and plunged into the cask, forced to drink sulfur-poisoned waters. Fire at night within 2 lodgings, many within suffocating and roasting. It is happening near 2 rivers, sun, archer, and goat, all death-like. Monarchs make accord, a great number condemned, but one of them is distressed by this event, that together always moaning. Mars, Sun, Venus in Leo, the Arab prince, by sea the rule of church succumbs. Towards Persia, very nearly 1 million men inclined. Byzantium, Egypt, the true serpent invades. The great empire, everyone would have of it. One above the other obtains it. But his time and reign is short, 2 years sustaining himself in ships. Norway and Sweden and the British Isles, vexed by brothers allied, the Roman chief of French lineage, and the forces beaten back to the forests. A grey bird in the air, a long time seen, near Dole and the Tuscan land, holding in its beak a green branch. A great one dies then, the war finishes. The heat of the sun upon the sea, the fish half-cooked at Negrepont. The inhabitants start eating them when food fails them in Rhodes and Genoa. One born from humble domain to Mount Royal tyrannizes over the bank account and vault, raises a force in the land of Milan. Ravenna and Florence drained of gold and men. Banking collapse, economic hardship and unemployment of the young in particular. This will manifest itself into rising crime, depression, mental illness, and lead to extremism. The first 2 lines of this quatrain have already taken place and concern the now previous chief of the Royal Bank of Scotland. The Mount refers to the Bank of Scotland. 2 great banks brought to collapse in a few short years of grave errors of management and motives, occurring after 300 years of respected probity and caution. Many other financial instruments and grand edifices will also collapse, brought upon by the excesses of greed and also of corruption. A bragamas with a crooked tongue into the sanctuary of the gods, he opens the gates to the heretics, provoking the militant church. The conditions are being set for a strong leader to come forth and miraculously solve the world's problems. This third and final Antichrist will be endorsed by and work with a powerful religious leader. warring Muslims in the black headdress. Bloodshed, Dalmatia trembles, great Ishmael sets up his promontory, frogs to tremble, Lusitania brings aid. Negligent France, assaulted on 5 fronts, Persia, Tunis, Algiers inciting, Leon, Seville, Barcelona yields, the Venetian fleet not pursued. Fleet wrecked near Adriatic waters. Earth trembles, moved upon the air and put on land. Egypt, fearing the Mahometan advance, sending the herald to surrender call. The Cimbrians joining their neighbors, ravaging almost all of Spain. People from Guyenne and Limousin gathering, in league bearing them company. Such a great army from Barcelona by sea, Marseille trembling with terror, all aid cut off by sea, the isles taken, your traitor swims on land. Marseille inhabitants completely changed, chased and pursued towards Lyon, Narbonne, Toulouse, outraged by Bordeaux, killing nearly 1 million captured. The Great Britain, comprising of England, becomes flooded by high waters. The new League of Ausonia makes war. Against them they stand together. So many inundations that there will be little land that is not covered by water. Before and after these floods, there will be little or no rain in many countries. 1,000 other disasters by waters and rains. Burning stones shall fall, and much fire. The world will be so diminished and the people so few that they will not find enough to till the ground, which will remain as fallow for as long as it was tilled. The efforts are great in the north. The gate of the ocean is opened. The kingdom of the isles is restored. Discovered by sail, London trembles. In the meadowfields of Algien and Venègue, of the Luberon mountain near Durance, 2 armies in conflict bitter. Mesopotamia fails in France. Libyan prince, powerful in the west, French impassioned with the Arab tongue, condescends that scholars translate the Arabic language into French. Fish, both terrestrial and aquatic, strong wave upon the beach, the form strange, smooth, horrific, from sea fast approaching, the enemy walls. Through fire and sword, nearby the Black Sea, of Persia comes to occupy Trebizond, trembles Pharos, Metellin, sun rejoices. The Adriatic covered with Arab blood. The ocean will be reddened by another naval battle such that one leader will say to another, "Naval battles have caused the sea to blush." Soldiers in a seditious fury against their chief flash steel by night. The enemy of Alba acts with furious hand, vexing Rome and deceiving the principal ones. Assembling on the plains of Media, Arabia and Armenia, two great armies. The host near the banks of Araxes, of great Soliman, to the ground falls. Through the Attic land, source of all wisdom, which at present is the rose of the world, the ocean ruins and its great preeminence, plunged under a shipwreck amidst the waves. While navigating the great pontiff ceased, great preparations fail, the clergy in tumult, absent, the well-being of the second elected declines, his favorite bastard silenced by death. To the great place of Karaman, ranks of crosses attached, the long-lasting opium and root of mandrake, Rogon released on the 3rd of October. Terror to all mankind, one who the infernal gods of Hannibal raised to life again. Never horror more or recorded worse to befall Rome by Babel. In this great cycle of time, mankind will come to the brink of annihilation, being overwhelmed by every kind of evil, sickness, terrorism, war, corruption, prejudice, famine, increasing poverty, oppression, religious confusion and conflict, political and economic upheaval. You are being prepared. The siege raised by the north wind, blowing ashes, lime and dust over the walls, much harm afterwards by rain, their last aid towards the frontier. Great labors and leaps, the animal tamed by man begins to speak. The lightning so harmful to the Virgin, taken from earth and suspended in the air. Night subdues the naval battle, fire ruining the ships of the west. New signal, the great ship colored, anger to the vanquished, and victory in the drizzle. There is peace, union, and change. Estates, offices, low high, and high very low. A journey prepared for, the first fruit, pains, wars cease, civil processes, discussion. When the great number 7 is complete, appearing at the time of the Olympic Games, not long past the millennium, then the buried come out from their graves. No rainbows appearing for 40 years. Seeing rainbows every day for 40 years. The land more and more arid, great flooding now. Great effusion of blood under the climate opposite to Babylonian. Land and sea, air, sky, full of evil. Sects, famine, kingdom, plagues, confusion. All the kingdoms of Christianity will tremble, even those of the infidels, for the space of 25 years. Wars and battles will be more grievous. And towns, cities, and buildings will be burnt, desolated, and destroyed with great effusions of vestal blood, violations of married women and widows, and children dashed and broken against walls. This by means of Satan, Prince Infernal. So many evils will be committed, and nearly all the world will find itself undone and desolated. Before these events, some rare birds will cry, "Today! Today!" And some will vanish. Population smaller, scourges past, lands inhabited, a long time peace, safe travel by air, land, and sea. Wars starting anew. Heaven weeps too much for the androgyne procreation. Near of heaven human bloodshed, by death too late, a great race reborn. Late and soon comes the aid awaited. Divine omen seen in plain daylight, at the eclipse of the sun, interpreting otherwise, high price unguarded, none foresaw it. Trembling of the earth at Mortara, Cassis, Saint-Georges half swallowed up. War awakens the sleeping peace. In the church at Easter, great schisms. When those of the Arctic pole are united together, in the East there is great fear and terror. Newly elected, the great church supported, Rhodes, Byzance, stained with barbarian blood. At night, a rainbow, by marine arts sustained, in the Gulf of Arabia, a great fleet sunk. In Saxony, a monster born of a bear and a sow. Near Serbia, to attack Hungary, the herald of Budapest comes to warn. Byzantium chief, Salona of Slavonia, to Arab law comes to convert. The kingdom of Fez spreading to those of Europe, steel and fire destroying their cities. The great one of Asia with great troop by land and sea, that blues, greens, crosses, to death he drives. A king with a blue turban enters into Foix, reigning less than a revolution of Saturn. The white turban king, Byzantium heart banish. Sun, Mars, and Mercury, near Aquarius. In the Conca near the Adriatic Sea appears a horrible fish, the face human, the tail aquatic, that is taken without a hook. Whilst these verses may intrigue, do not be tempted to dabble in execrable magic, forbidden by the sacred scriptures, which damns the soul, bringing vexation to the senses. Let those who hear these verses consider this profoundly. Let the profane and ignorant keep away, and far away all astrologers, idiots, and barbarians. He who does otherwise will be subject to the sacred rite. At the fourth pillar devoted to Saturn, split by tremulous sea and land, an urn found underneath Saturn's edifice of Scipion's stolen gold, then handed over. The sun in the 20th of Taurus, great earthquake, of the great theatre filled to ruin, the air, sky, and land dark and troubled, infidels calling upon God and saints. All the old roads improved. One travels freely to reach the entrance underground. The great Mercury of Hercules, fleur de lis, makes tremble the earth, sea, and countries. A great kingdom left desolate, near to the Hebrew assembling. The Pyrenees mountains comfort him, earthquakes in May. Milk, blood, and frogs hail down on Dalmatia, conflict given, epidemic near Baliene, cry made great through all Slavonia, then born a monster within Ravenna near. After great human tragedy, even greater approaches. The great motor of the ages starts an age anew. It rains blood, milk, famine, iron, and plague. In the sky, running fire, sparks long trailing. After this has endured for a long time, there will be renewed another reign, a golden age. Hearing the affliction of his people, God the Creator will command that Satan be cast into the depths of the bottomless pit and bound there. Then a universal peace will commence between God and man, and Satan will remain bound for 1,000 years, and then all unbound. Therefore, I withdraw my pen and seek nocturnal repose. Many of these events, most powerfully affecting all and of the most astounding sort, are to transpire soon. The moon is past 20 years of reign. Another takes the reign for 7,000 years. The sun in its last days, this prophecy fulfilled. May the immortal God grant you a long life in happiness. From Salon de Provence, at this time, I am Michael Nostradamus.